I thought today it'd be great to have a quick look at the subject of dates. Um, am I talking about the dates that you get in a little packet? You might be having some at Christmas. Am I talking about the dates of the calendar? Um, or am I talking about romantic dates? There's a few different uses of this word, aren't there, in the English language? And it's interesting how we sometimes take hold of a word and it can mean quite different things. There's a lot of difference between the words date and data, isn't there, as well? So, we get a little bit confused by these terms. So I shall explain myself. Firstly, the good thing about dates is they turn up a lot in the Bible. The dates are mentioned as date palms, and a situation where we often find the fruit of that particular tree being really important, and we see that being used quite frequently in the Bible. And the amazing story is there's a date palm that they found some very ancient seeds actually a while back, and they managed to get them growing. And it seems quite complicated with date palms actually, that you have like a male and a female tree, and so you need both actually to reproduce the tree. And they managed to get these going, and they were very keen to try and reintroduce this to the land of Israel, because the dates that have been growing there, that they've been producing for a long time, aren't actually native to that land. And there's lots of little examples in the Bible of how date palms are used. And when we see those kind of trees, and we see vegetation happening in a land that's basically very dry, we know that it's a sign that maybe there might be an oasis, there might be a source of water, a spring, some kind of way in which those trees can be not only planted but can flourish. So going on to the second word about dates, dates of the calendar. So there's times that we find are very special for us. I mean, maybe your birthday is an important date for you. Christmas is coming up at the moment, and that's a big important date in the calendar in the UK. And there might be also times that we have, you look forward to the dates of your holiday, for example. You put them on the calendar and think, wow, I'm looking forward to that time away. And the Bible talks about those kind of dates too. Those dates when special times are set apart, special times are put in the calendar. We see that the biblical feasts that happen, the Feast of Tabernacles, for example, the Day of Atonement, those kind of dates are very important. Were very important to the Jewish people. Very much part of their rhythm, part of their yearly cycle. Very important that they kept those feasts. They went up to Jerusalem 3 times a year for Passover, for Pentecost, and for the Feast of Tabernacles. So those dates are very important ones, and having a rhythm and special times, special moments. And so that leads me on to the third use of the word dates, which is really when we're thinking about maybe a special meal, a special occasion. Perhaps it's important to remind ourselves, if we're married, to make a special date night. When we've put something aside in the calendar, we've selected a special time. So when we think about date palms, we might be thinking about a special place which is watered. When we're thinking about special dates, we might be thinking about what's marked on the calendar. And when we're thinking about dating, as people often call it in the UK, we might be thinking about what's making someone special. So there might be a particular time that we're setting aside, but what's making it special for that special person that we're wanting to impress, or we feel we're very attracted to, or who's important in our life, and we need to really recognise and acknowledge that. Don't forget your wedding anniversary. That's a special date, and you need to remember who you're celebrating and why it's important. So I'm going to just read something from the book of Song of Songs. I've just been listening to some wonderful talks by a chap called Mike Bickle. You can find them online. YouTube has got a whole set of them. Talks that he did actually originally, I think 1998, it goes back quite a way, but lovely reflections on Song of Songs, a book that he studied in enormous detail. And I'm just going to take something from chapter 1 in Song of Songs. And it's quite an intense book. And I'll mention a couple of things about that in a second. But it says in Song of Songs, chapter 1, verse 2, how pleasing is your fragrance. Your name is like the spreading fragrance of scented oils. No wonder all the young women love you. Take me with you. Come, let's run. The king's brought me into his bedroom. So it's talking about a very intimate relationship, a very special relationship, and a very close relationship, a very exclusive relationship in this romance, in this intimacy. And the Bible talks about this, and many people think of this perhaps in terms of relationship between Solomon and his bride, and how over 8 chapters he starts to unpack about this relationship and celebrate it. And it's also important to understand within the whole history of the time since this book was written, that frequently people have thought about this as a real wonderful example, an unpacking of the relationship between God and Israel, or Christ and his church, the closeness, the intimacy, the specialness. If we come into a place of knowing God's presence, there's something pleasant and wonderful and beautiful about it. There's something that makes it special, something that needs to be marked out, time that needs to be marked out specially, something that's sweet about it, that is enjoyable and special as well, something that maybe needs watering, needs encouraging, something that needs to be recognized as an exclusive and a high priority relationship. And it's easy for that to sort of get a bit missed, isn't it? It's easy for lots of other things to take over in life. It's easier for things to crowd into our life that are good and they're not bad, but they somehow rob us of that specialness, that intimacy, and that particular quality that we need to maintain in our relationship with God. So I just want to challenge us afresh today. What date have you arranged? What date have you arranged with the Lord? What date, what opportunity, what time, what special moment, what exclusive devotion have you sought to establish or reignite with God? What things are you wanting to reconsecrate? What things do you want to revive in your spiritual relationship? What things are perhaps lost their spice, they've lost their zing, they've lost their connection point? What things have perhaps wooed you away and have got you sort of focused on other stuff, And when you look at those stories of how people meet, I was watching just recently a very interesting series of little films done with very little commentary, but just simply the people's words, and there were stories about matchmaking in Israel. It was fascinating, and how Orthodox Jews were first meeting people, and they have a series of quite sort of carefully selected people that they might meet, and then they have moments that they're brought together, and they have a limited series of dates, but they're very intentional. And then I was watching something where, one of these kind of programs where they do a first date thing, and it's very Western in its approach, of course, and you see everybody's kind of like, trying to impress the other person, and maybe quite nervous and all the rest of it. But what was interesting is that what mattered ultimately, they might be attracted to somebody, they might think, wow, that person's so beautiful, wonderful, etc., handsome. All those things might be true. But what became very obvious is, what do they share in real common values and interests? What really brought them together? When it comes down to it, have they got anything to talk about? I mean, it's no good just sitting there and being, wow, dumbfounded and amazing person, and I'm so impressed by you and all the rest of it. Well, that's fine, but at the end of the day, you've got to have something to really talk about, to connect with at a deeper level than that. And I think that's what's special about being drawn back to that relationship with God. We need to come into a place where we learn to reconnect. We find that presence of God. We find His fragrance in our life. We feel that there's something that's drawing us close and drawing us intimately to know Him again, and coming into that exclusive relationship. That other things start to fade away, other things start to become secondary, other things start to become of less importance, and we're renewed in that love. We're renewed in that closeness. We're renewed in that first love relationship, like those on the first date, like those Orthodox Jewish people who were meeting someone for the first time. Lots of work could be done behind the scenes, matchmaking. Some of the programs that they do on telly and the rest of it, they spend a lot of time actually working out who would work with who. Let's try and think of somebody who might be suitable, that meets their list of requirements. And God is looking for people who connect into His requirements, people who actually desire the same things as He desires, who want the same things, who are passionate about the same things. And as we do that, we find ourselves being drawn closer. We find that we feel connected and compatible. We feel we're on the same page. And those things are very important. So I want to pray that God would draw us close to Himself, that we renew those dates. The sweetness of God's presence would be so real for us in our life, that would be well-watered garden, would be a place where we feel that our life is refreshed and strong and flourishing, because our intimacy and connection with God is like those date palms. I pray that we will be people who find those dates, those moments on our calendar, maybe over a period of holiday or downtimes. We can take that opportunity again. Maybe God might want to revive our relationship with Him and draw us closer to Him in this time. And I pray for that, for you, for myself, for others. Maybe you've been distracted by many things and lost sense of focus and drawing close to the Lord. And I pray too that there'll be that closeness, or maybe there's somebody important in your life that you also need to work at that relationship in the process as well, recognizing that being close to the Lord, being close to God is very important, and sometimes actually when that comes, we find that those that we need to give some priority to in our lives, we start to realize that we may have forgotten them in the process as well. We might have forgotten their needs. We might have forgotten some of the important relationships in our lives. But first and foremost, I pray that we will be drawn back to that first love, that first deep connection with God, that we would find, that we would enjoy the fragrance of God's presence, that we would be connected in, that our heart's desire will be to run to Him, to be close to Him, to know Him again, to be revived in that relationship, to be renewed in our intimacy with God. I pray that for us today, and that will be so much the theme of today and this week ahead, and maybe these months ahead, that there'd be a special season for you, that God would draw you to Himself, and you would find that fresh reality of His love for you, and that relationship deepen all over again. Bless you today, and I hope that helps.